everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider to go over the weekend video into the last full week of September. Let's go over SPY, QQQ, IWM, and VIX, and then we'll touch on a few other stocks into next week. So starting with SPY, Friday today was pretty brutal. However, we did close right at this June 29th anchored VWAP, which is pretty classic. Just respecting the anchored VWAP is something that SPY loves to do, as it has in the past couple months. And you can see here as well, on the weekly side of things, the price action has finally kind of moved back inside the upper monthly Bollinger Band. Remember, this is the weekly chart with the monthly Bollinger Band overlaid. But you can see anytime this has happened in the past, we have had some pretty strong moves down. Back in 2019, we did have about a 6.45% move down in 2 weeks. So we are beating that already from the ultimate high here in late August. However, these moves have been bigger over the past, and especially in the last 2 years, this has been a thing pretty often. And we'll have to see if this continues down all the way down to the SMA 20 from the monthly chart, which it usually does. As you can see here, back in 2018, it didn't fully do that. However, it did move down about 11% within 2 months. So is this over? We'll have to see, but it is three red weeks in a row, and we'll just have to see if that continues into the later part of September. Going into the Qs, something very similar. We can see that the anchored VWAP really acted as perfect support and a level of interest for buyers today, as Brian likes to say, Brian Shannon, who really uses this and taught me how to use it. You can see here we closed right at that anchored VWAP once again. We do have a little bit of an offset here. So this secondary line is a percentage offset. So you can see here that the price action did break down through it before in June of 2020 this year. And so what I did was I added a little bit of a margin of error here to take into account these two candles, and notice what happened. We moved down almost perfectly to this area. This particular offset is a 1.5% offset to the downside. You can see we almost touched that perfectly today. So on the weekly side of things, if we scroll back in time, you can see this really big move outside of the monthly Bollinger Band doesn't happen very often at all. It's happened in the last couple weeks. It happened in 2020 before we really crashed before coronavirus. And then it also happened in March 2012. And you can see that, as I just mentioned, it's not that common to really get that overextended in the market. However, you can see what happens after. The market just continues to move up, just like it usually does. The market is really something that is an inflation play. Over time, the market is always going to go up simply because inflation a lot of the time. So will this continue down? Sure. But over time, over the next 10 years, I would be willing to bet that we're at all-time highs, or obviously a lot higher. So the point is sure, the market's always going to pull back, but that does not mean it's the end of the world. It's natural. You need to have pullbacks in the market for the market to go higher. So IWM, if I can spell. IWM is one that actually held pretty well and actually closed green on the week, which is interesting. So we have this kind of symmetrical triangle here on the weekly chart, and on the daily chart we have this very strong broadening formation. And what I want to point out here, and this is a new way I'm starting to draw trend lines. So the outside trend lines, which are wick to wick, which have not had price action break through them, are going to be solid. And then the secondary double trend line that I always like to draw, this is going to be dashed because you can see price has violated this line. So we make it dash so we know that this is not necessarily a hard trend line like the outer one. So here we can see that we are in the middle of this broadening formation. On the weekly chart, we're getting close to the apex of this symmetrical triangle, so I'd have to guess that there is some type of big move coming within the next 1 to 2 months, and that falls in line perfectly with the election. So we'll just have to see what happens. Going over the VIX is one that I really don't like to chart just because the VIX is the VIX. It's not something that can always be charted, but let's have some fun and look at the daily chart here. Possibly an inverse head and shoulders forming. We still have this massive gap below on the weekly. We'll just have to see what happens. But out of all the things to be charted, the VIX is definitely one not to take with not to take too seriously. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. So gap below, also possibly an inverse head and shoulders on the daily chart. We'll just have to see what happens. Going into some of the stocks into the week ahead, let's look at PTON. PTON is one that absolutely ripped on Friday, which is interesting considering the rest of the market was having trouble. You can see here it's a very solid channel here, and we're moving towards the middle of the channel, possibly to retest the top of the channel after kind of brutal earnings. This huge engulfing candle we were talking about last week finally tried to retest this bottom area. Notice how this channel down here is not just one trend line, it's two trend lines, and that's why I like to use the solid and the dashed line. Now, on the weekly side of things, we did actually close through the 3.618 area, something we haven't done before. We've moved through it, we just haven't closed through it on the weekly, which is something that is new for this particular week. So let's see what happens into next week. Tesla, everybody's favorite thing to go over. We'll have to just see what this is showing, but essentially, using this same thing, solid lines on the outside, dashed lines on the inside showing price did violate it. You can see here that Tesla didn't have a horrible day on Friday. Today, you can see that we are kind of trading right in the middle of this range. I don't want to call it a channel because it isn't perfectly parallel, but it's pretty close. And then you can see here on the weekly chart, we had a nice bounce off of this trend line that we were talking about last weekend. And so will we test the top? Who knows? But all we can do is simply create an alert, and let's be alerted whenever the 30-minute chart, or excuse me, the 30-minute candle closes in this area, and we'll just click touch. So that means when the price touches this area, we will be alerted into next week. So I don't have to watch the chart anymore. The chart will alert me when we get to this zone, and will it make it? Who knows? Going into JPMorgan, you can see here that JPMorgan did really respect these two trend lines below. This week, we did have a test of this resistance above, pulled back, and really acted as perfect support here on this dashed line. You can see here that this symmetrical triangle is pretty much exhausted at this point. We have no more apex to work with on this symmetrical triangle. So if we turn on the volume by price, will this area continue to act as a launch pad with the coiling price action? We'll just have to see. But all in all, we are getting very close to a make or break here on JPMorgan. Going into Amazon. Amazon was really disappointing this Friday, especially because we had this like textbook abandoned baby here on Thursday and then just absolutely got wrecked on Friday's price action, and really a very strong engulfing candle here. So we'll have to see what happens, but really on the weekly chart, not looking great. We have clearly broken down through a longer term area of support, and if we anchor a VWAP from this March low, if this continues down, a level of interest may be even at the 2600s. So we'll just have to see what happens and kind of go from there. Going into NKLA, this is one that everybody likes to trade. Shocker that we actually were able to see quite a bit of buying the last 3 days, especially weird considering JPMorgan. GM was considering backing out of the deal. At least that was the rumor. So you can see here that we do anchor the VWAP, the volume by price from this May 26th start. That's pretty much where this bottom trend starts. And you can see there's a ton of volume creating a base here for price. You can also see on the weekly chart we have this kind of double bottom forming here, and we'll just have to see if that holds going into the week ahead. But a relatively strong weekly candle here. Very surprising, I gotta say. AMD, this is one that has really been respecting the anchored VWAP very nicely over the last couple weeks. Still respecting it. If we anchor a volume by price from this anchored VWAP start on June 29th, you'll see a majority of the volume is actually holding above this price level, and you can see that on the weekly chart, we're pretty much trading right in the middle of this slight broadening formation here. Are we flagging? Who knows? We'll just have to see what happens, but we did have a pretty strong move up, rejected at this resistance zone, and now we have quite a few wicks in these candles showing that there were buyers pushing the price up at some point during the week, but they just couldn't hold on into the end of the week. So will this be a flag? We'll just have to see, but it kind of seems like it's forming one currently. Going into Boeing. Boeing really looked promising until it was rejected pretty hard today on Friday. You can see here that it was looking promising, there was decent strength here in these two candles, and then we tried to break through and just couldn't do it and closed at the low of the day. This is a descending triangle, which not a lot of the time is this bullish. Generally, I like to look for a falling wedge rather than a descending triangle as a bullish setup, but who knows? We'll just have to see. If we do break out, the level of interest above is the Alpha Trends anchored VWAP from this June 8th high, and you can see here if we anchor the volume by price from this this high, all-time high, you'll see this is going to act as a supply zone if we can't get through this area. Because remember, this big chunk of volume is essentially telling us that a majority of shares are holding at this zone, and the price really needs to break through this huge chunk of shares before many people are holding at a profit. And so as the price moves back up, if it does, these will be break-even sellers. So that means that they break even. They're like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm going to move on. So that could cause some issues for the bullish side of things, getting through this big supply zone above. Love is one that is beautiful. I got to admit, this is a really, really strong ascending triangle here, and you can see here that we did have a little bit of pullback the second half of the week. However, it is still looking pretty strong, and you can see here using the anchored volume by price, essentially this huge inverse head and shoulders did materialize. We had a strong move off this volume shelf here. Remember, we're anchoring from this reversal point here, or this highest high before the reversal, and really nice textbook move. However, quite the wick on the weekly chart, so we'll just have to see if that is indicative of sellers going into the week ahead. A couple other ones. Let's look at GLD. GLD was really pretty stagnant this week. I mean, literally barely anything happened, especially on the GLD and SLV side of things. You really just had price just hanging out within this volume shelf. You can see here that we did try to test this bull flag resistance above. However, we did not actually break through it. Next week, we can try again. If we anchor the volume by price from this low, you will see quite a bit of volume starting to aggregate at this particular area. So going into SLV, you can see here that very similar to GLD, except SLV did not have as strong as a Friday as GLD did. And you can see here that the bull flag is definitely forming as well. We did not test the resistance zone like we did on GLD, but all in all, you can see that we are really hanging on right at this volume shelf, and it's getting pretty coiled. We're going to have to see if the stimulus package, if there is one, helps gold and silver get to new highs here. So going over Roku and Zoom as the last ones, you can see here that essentially we have the anchored volume by price and the anchored VWAP from this June 29th low, and we're really having trouble getting through this swing high anchored VWAP. We do have quite a bit of volume holding around 150, so we'll have to see if this acts as an area, a level of interest for buyers if the price continues down into next week. But as you can see here, we are really having trouble getting through this this double top area that we have failed to break through multiple weeks now in a row, and we'll just have to see if this is really a hard level of resistance or just a consolidation zone before the next leg up. Last one is Zoom. Zoom is one that just will not stop. It's kind of insane, but it is what it is. That's the market. If we anchor the volume weighted average price from this August 12th low and the volume by price, you can see how well this area did act as a volume shelf and a launch pad for price this week. And you can see here, I mean, we just keep moving up. So, it's one of those things that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, Zoom is very popular, but the fundamental side of this just doesn't make sense, but that's not for me to decide. That's just for the market to decide where this finally closes and or finds a top, not closes. It closed at almost the high of the week. But if we break this intra-week high from August, this thing could really move up even higher, and this is where you throw the fibs out. So if we start a fib from here, we may even have to add like a 6.18 extension here to get an idea of where this may be going. Let's add it. Oh, we're already past that. We may have to add a 7.618 extension. We're already past that. Let's do 8. All right, so this is pretty much where it was rejected last time. So this 8.618 extension around 460 would be the next level of interest. So all in all, a crazy week. Hopefully everyone had a good trading week, and hopefully you enjoyed this video to go over some of the charts into next week. Everyone have a great weekend. Make sure to sign up for a free trial, 7 days for free if you haven't already, and we will see you next week.